I was attacked by bees. A lot of bees. This is the true story I want to tell you today so that you can learn English in the best way possible by listening to a real story in English. Welcome to English Coach 3Ts. If we haven't met, my name is Tanya, and I am the founder and creator of our She Speaks Fluency program for women. Today's story is a little different than some of the other stories that I have told you because it happened very recently. And a lot of the stories I've told you are true stories that have happened earlier in my life. Before we get into today's story, I want to tell you a little bit about things you could do to get the most out of listening to this story. You're going to want to listen and just try to understand as much as you can. Don't worry if you don't understand every word. If you want to, you can pause it every now and then to take some notes, write down some of the vocabulary or the definitions I give you of words. But the second time you watch it, try watching it all the way through without stopping. This second time, you're going to understand a lot more, and it's going to help you to remember the new words and all of the things that I'm saying in this story. And be sure to listen to the end of the video because I'm going to share a bonus phrase that goes very well with this story and will be useful for you. So let's get to it. As many of you know, I live here in the beautiful mountains of Southern California. And the other day it was starting to get colder, so I decided I needed to come outside and get some firewood because I heat my home with a wood-burning stove. So I got my gloves on and got my firewood sling. This is a sling you can use to put firewood in. This has just 2 pieces of firewood, or you could say these are logs. And I headed out over this way to get some firewood out of a wagon that was the first firewood I wanted to use this year. I took the sling and I balanced it on my knees, opened it up so that I could put some wood in it. And I had put maybe 3 or 4 pieces of wood in the sling when I felt a stabbing feeling in my knee. It was very shocking to me because I had not seen any bees in that area. But as soon as I looked up, I realized that I was in the middle of a bee swarm. Bees were swarming all around me. A swarm, a bee swarm, is a group of bees all flying together. And this swarm was all over me, all around me, and starting to sting me. We typically say that a bee stings you. You could also say it bit you, but it's more accurate to say you were stung by a bee. The bee uses the stinger on the end of its body to poke your skin, and it puts a type of poison into your skin. This type of poison is called venom. So right away, I was being stung by these bees. So I started to run around this direction and out towards the back part of my yard. I was yelling and screaming and swatting the bees. This is swatting the bees, trying to get them off of me. And I was swatting all over my body and realized it was not working. These bees were very aggressive and they were chasing me, which I know is not common for bees. You might get stung once by a bee. In fact, most bees can only sting you once, but these bees were following me. They were chasing me. I was running and they were flying after me. They were chasing me. This is not normal behavior for a bee. I have to say though, at the time I wasn't thinking about that. The only thing I was thinking about was how to get them to stop. And I also started to hear that Espy is my dog, was also screaming, and I saw that she was also running away from the bees. This broke my heart because Espy was not barking like you hear a dog bark. Bark, 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 or we say bow wow when we're talking about a dog barking. Ruff, ruff, ruff. This is a dog barking. She was not barking. She was screaming in pain, and my heart was breaking at the same time that I was in a lot of pain because I was being stung all over my body. Gratefully, at that moment, I remembered that if you jump into a swimming pool, the bees won't go under the water. I don't have a swimming pool here in my forest yard, but I do have a garden hose. A garden hose is what you see here in this video that you can use to water plants. I grabbed the water hose, turned it on as fast as I could, and started soaking my body at the same time I was running towards Espy to try and soak her body. But she did not want me to soak her. To soak yourself, to soak anything, is to get it very, very wet with a lot of water. Now, Espy doesn't like to have the hose on her. She doesn't like to get wet with the hose. But remember, the whole reason I came outside was because it was getting cold and I needed to build a fire. So she definitely didn't want me to put cold water all over her. It wasn't freezing cold, really cold, but it was cold enough you didn't want to be wet. So I finally was able to get Espy wet, which, as much as she didn't want it, she needed me to do this so that the bees would stop stinging her. And pretty soon we were both soaking wet and dripping with water. And while I'm doing this, I realized the bees are still stinging me because they were inside my clothing. So I'm soaking us both with water and ripping my clothes off as fast as I can, my shoes, the gloves I was wearing, everything. I'm taking everything off and I'm soaking Espy down. And the sad part was when Espy's curly hair got flat because it was wet, I could see bees crawling all over her. So I started to try and swipe. This is a swiping motion. Before I was swatting. It's kind of like hitting and swiping is swatting. But with Espy, I was trying to swipe these bees off of her because I didn't want her to get stung again. I didn't want to get stung again. And pretty soon I was pretty sure that there were no more bees on her. I have to say I was very hesitant to pick her up. She was not going to move. She was very scared and she wanted to hide under a plant, and she was still crying and shaking and very, very scared. I knew I would have to pick her up to take her in the house, and I was very hesitant to do that. In other words, I was nervous to do that. I was cautious to do that because I wasn't sure if I could see any bees on her, and if I picked her up, I'd get stung again. And at this point, I was in quite a bit of pain. So after really making sure she had no more bees on her, I picked her up and took her in the house. I called a friend who told us we should put some vinegar on our stings to help the pain to go away. So I doused us in vinegar To douse us means to soak us, a lot like soaking us with water. I just had one jar, so I used it all, poured it all on myself and on Espy, and honestly, it really didn't help that much. So I dried myself off, I dried Espy off, I wrapped her in a towel because she was still so traumatized. And I got her all set underneath a chair. She wanted to hide under this chair or under the bed. And I went as quickly as I could to the pharmacy to find out if there was any medicine we could take to help with this pain. And also, I know that sometimes bees can be very dangerous. The pharmacist did recommend some medicine that could be used, so I brought it home. And between getting help from Tiana and Talia and calling a veterinarian and figuring out how to do everything, I was able to get medicine for both Espy and I. And honestly, it didn't help that much either, but it did put me to sleep. It made me go to sleep, which was a very good thing. But I didn't sleep really well because I was in so much pain, and Espy continued crying and whimpering. A whimper is a quiet cry, like when a dog whimpers. You could say a human is whimpering, but it's more common to say a dog is whimpering. And she cried and whimpered for 5 hours before she finally went to sleep for the rest of the night. I kept waking up in the night because I had so much pain from these bee stings that were all over my body, on both arms, on my neck, behind my ears, all in my hair, on one of my legs, on my knee, on my back. And they not only hurt a lot, they were also starting to get itchy. So I would, if something is itchy, you want to scratch it. So I was scratching and in a lot of pain, but I did let myself sleep as long as possible. The next day, I knew I had to take really good care of myself, so I just did the classes that I have, and I didn't do any of the things I do behind the scenes, meaning the things you don't see me doing, like making these videos, working on the computer, sending out emails, all of that kind of thing. On the next day after that, I also took it easy. In other words, I didn't work as much as I usually would. I did all of my classes. I did a little bit of behind the scenes work. And then on the third day, I was feeling better. The pain and all of the bites made me very tired. And so I was moving slower for the whole time. But by the third or fourth day, I was starting to feel a little more like myself. I did learn later on that it does take like 1 to 2 weeks for this particular kind of bee sting to really go away. So it was one of those bee stings you really don't want to get. On the fourth day, I did call a beekeeper to come and help me with the problem that I had. A beekeeper is a person who knows how to handle bees safely, and they might even be the person who can take the bees away. That is what happened in this case. So you can see in this video that the beekeeper approached the wagon or went towards the wagon to try and see what was going on in there while he was spraying it and trying to quiet the bees. He said he was putting the bees to sleep and making them so that they would stop moving around so much. And after he worked and worked, he finally took some of the wood out of the wagon. And eventually you can see from this video that he took that he found a nest or a beehive inside the wagon, just below where I had been picking up wood to put in my sling to take into the house. The beekeeper did take the beehive away and told me that it would be safe after about 24 hours to go back outside and use any of the wood that I had in that area. It was interesting the things I learned from him. For example, there were about 30,000 bees in this beehive, which is really incredible to me. He said they were probably there for 2 to 3 weeks, which tracks because Tiana had gotten one bee sting a few days before this, or maybe more than a few days before this. When I say it tracks, I mean that makes sense. If I look back on what happened, Tiana had gotten a bee sting in her hair, which had been very scary in and of itself because the bee got stuck in her hair and it hurt a lot. The beekeeper also told me that these were German yellow jackets, which are actually a type of bee. I thought maybe they were wasps because they were so aggressive, meaning they attacked me, even though I really didn't hurt them. They attacked me because they were protecting their nest. They thought that I was going to attack their nest, so they were attacking me. Bees typically won't hurt you unless you hurt them or attack their nest. And a regular bee can typically only sting you one time. These are different. The beekeeper said that this type of bee acts like a wasp. Wasps are more aggressive. This type of bee acts like a wasp. It is more aggressive. It will chase you and it can sting you more than one time, putting that poison or that venom under your skin. Now, I'm going to spare you all the details, meaning I'm not going to tell you all the things that the beekeeper told me in case it would be upsetting for you. But you can go and look online. In fact, if you're interested, this is another way I recommend working on your English, is finding out more about this topic, because looking more into an interesting topic can really help you with your English. So go use Google or ChatGPT or Ecosia to find out more about these German yellow jackets. Experiences like this one are no fun, that is for sure, and they can be costly. Beekeepers cost quite a bit of money, and additionally, you might be like me where you miss work or what have you. But I think that the important thing is the bonus phrase or idiom that I want to share with you today, which is to look for the silver lining. We use this idiom when we mean to look for the good parts of something that was bad. Now, I don't mean to misuse this and have toxic positivity, which means that everything is always good all the time. I'm not talking about that. For me, it helps me to find the things that I can be grateful for and to look for the good things that happened or are happening as a result of this bad thing that happened. And the silver lining that really stands out for me, in other words, there were more than one silver linings, but the one that I think is really the most important for me, the one that really touches my heart, is how many friends and family were really there and ready to be supportive and caring and helpful, as well as students who were also very supportive and kind and had lots of supportive things to say to me, and that they could be so flexible because I wasn't able to get all of the things ready that I would normally have ready in our She Speaks program. The women were willing to wait and let me have time to rest and recover. I think that this is one of the greatest things that we can have in life, are people around us who are kind and understanding and flexible. This is one of the things I'm so grateful for in my life, and it's also one of the reasons that I created our She Speaks Fluency program for women, because I know the best way to learn English is in a community, in a group where there are people who are kind and supportive and helpful. And that's what we have created in our She Speaks program. This is a place where you can get all of the things you need, all of your questions are answered. You can find out the best way to become fluent and have people you can talk to so that you're not always thinking, who am I going to talk to? I don't have anyone to practice my speaking with. If you'd like more information about our She Speaks Fluency program for women, I will put a link below so that you can get on the wait list and be the next person who can sign up when I open the doors again. While you're waiting, I'll send you an email with some information, and I will send you some English learning tips so you can keep learning while you're waiting. Listening to stories like this one is one of the best ways to learn vocabulary and remember vocabulary. And if you want to know even more ways to learn vocabulary, you're going to want to watch this video next. I'll see you there. He's trying to